Hello and welcome to Around the Wickets on ThePapare.com. Now today we're talking about Sri Lanka's tour, the tour that ended to England, and rather a disastrous tour. Now if you try to compare Sri Lanka's current tour or the last tour with the previous one, the results were completely contrasting, with Sri Lanka winning all three formats and just sweeping the board. But this time around, Sri Lanka lost the Test series 2-0, but let's give them some credit about that Headingley Test match. Well, most teams would have struggled. The one-day series lost 3-0 wasn't too good for Sri Lanka, because particularly one felt that the Sri Lankans would have competed better when the one-day series started, with the sun shining, pitchers better, players getting a bit more used to English conditions. And the T20 game, I thought that the Sri Lankans were stifled by some very fine England bowling. Now, what does this tour tell us? Was England so good, or was Sri Lanka bad? I think it was a combination of both. Now, England have come a long way as a team, not just Test, but One Day and T20. I've been insisting on the fact that Trevor Bayliss could always add so much to a one-day side. When you look at his CV as a one-day coach, coaching Sri Lanka, coaching Calcutta Knight Riders, coaching New South Wales, he's shown results. And you could see that England, after their debacle in that 2015 World Cup, have come a long, long way in the shorter format of the game. Well, we're not trying to talk about England, but I was just giving them some credit for what they have done. But what went wrong with Sri Lanka? Now, to start with, let's also try and give them a bit of consideration. Now, they never had their best side on the park. Now, if you look at the players that pitched out at different stages of the tour, Dushmantha Chameera, Lasith Malinga never made the tour. Jeffrey Vanderse was considered to be part of that squad who would have made it to England. He was injured just before the series started. Prasad during the first game, Tirimana during the tour, and then Dilshan opting out for personal reasons. So it was a depleted squad as far as Sri Lanka was concerned, but it's not a reason or an excuse for Sri Lanka to perform so badly. Now, one of the things that exposed the Sri Lankans were their bowling attack. Now, when it came to Test cricket, well, they had Rangana Herath, they had Dushmantha Chameera, and the conditions were all right. But look at the one-day bowling attacks of both England and Sri Lanka. I thought the Sri Lankan bowling attack looked pretty one-dimensional. All the seam bowlers, almost the same speed, the same type, and also that X factor that you need when it comes to any form of cricket never existed when it came to Sri Lanka. That wicket-taking ability, the surprise factor that Lasith Malinga brings in with his slinging action, maybe a Vanderse, maybe what Muralidharan did long years ago. Now, that was something that the Sri Lankans did not have. Now, as a result of it, one-day cricket is not about bowling dot balls. It's also about dismissing batsmen. Now, the Sri Lankans had a problem. When you don't dismiss batsmen, how do you create the pressure? So when you can't create the pressure, well, the runs seem to flow. Now, that's how England chased down big scores, and that's how the English batsmen found it quite easy. Now, lots of people were excited when Sikuke Prasanna played a magnificent knock in that first game, a marvellous 50, just went after the England bowling, just surprised them. But then let's look at what England did to him after that first game. They never bowled to his strength. What was his strength? His strength was to loft, and his strength was to sweep. And what the English fast bowlers did was they just kept banging it short, back of a length, pushing him on the back foot, and never allowed him to try and free his arms. Now, I wonder whether that certainly, stifled or caused him to struggle in his bowling. Now, Sri Lanka needs a good spinner. They need a wicket-taking spinner. They need someone who could come and ask questions of the opponents. Now, Siku sadly failed a lot in that part. And unfortunately, I felt Suraj Randiv's appearance was far, far too brief. You can't judge a spinner by one game. Now, I'm worried for Sri Lankan spinners. Is there a dearth? Is there a problem with Sri Lankan spinners? Now, I've always said, when Rangana Herath retires, who is going to get wickets for Sri Lanka? So now that's an area the selectors, the Sri Lanka Cricket Board, and people who are involved will have to work, particularly wicket-taking bowlers and spinners. And also, we've heard from Simon Wills, the high-performance manager, that there have been quite a few drop catches on the tour. Well, 20 catches were dropped during the whole tour, 15 in the outfield and 5 behind the stumps. Now, that's a very high percentage of catches being missed, and at an international level, you'll expect sides to be sharp. Now, they need to take the half chances. That's how you try and, convert situations, win moments. Because let's not forget that pitchers are very favored, tilted towards batsmen. So dismissing them is not easy. So the fielders need to support the bowling unit, and they need to do that by grabbing half chances. Well, so if you drop 20 catches on the tour, that's an area I think people will have to look at and work on. Now, these what we spoke of have been all the mistakes, the negatives, and what went wrong with Sri Lanka. But I'm sure every dark cloud has a silver lining. Now, what are the silver linings that the Sri Lankans have? I think the biggest was Kusal Mendis. I didn't really think that Kusal Mendis will succeed in England, because for one thing, he didn't have enough experience, but to his credit, he came out brilliantly at number 3 for Sri Lanka, and he's someone who I think has cemented his place, at least for the Australian tour. And let's hope this is our former under-19 captain, someone who has a lot of shots and plays positive cricket, will remain as Sri Lanka's number 3. Well, also Chandimal and Matthews, I thought they combined quite well. The vice captain's position was always a poison chalice. Everyone who had this vice captain's tag struggled. But Chandimal seemed to be an exception now. I think he's had his moments, he's come back, he's risen to the occasion, and I thought he's come out of this tour as a better and a more mature batsman, and someone that the Sri Lankans could depend a lot on, along with Angelo Matthews and Upul Tharanga, of course, getting back into the one-day side. Quite useful, didn't open, but quite an useful player down the order. He might feature a little bit more come the one-day team. So, what next for Sri Lanka? Well, Sri Lanka will be taking on Australia on a full tour. Australians are a very strong outfit. Don't forget, they are a rounded side. They got a good test side. They got a good one-day side. Their fast bowlers are good. And the Sri Lankans, the only advantage is they will be playing at home. So they need to maximize on the home advantage, and let's hope that the Sri Lankans will be able to come up with something special. And I know there are lots of fans who are very, very disappointed, but I can tell you that well, you can live in hope. You can certainly have some hope, because the Sri Lankan nucleus is good. It's a matter of gaining some experience, playing together, and I believe they're just one win away from really dominating some of the teams and getting back to winning ways. So that's it this time on Around the Wickets. We'll come back once more very soon. Until then, it's goodbye from all of us.